Today we're going to be going over different techniques to check the symmetry in your sculpture. This won't apply to every sculpture because some sculptures, with the characters the way that they are, they might be highly asymmetrical. But in this case, I'm going to use my Baba Yaga sculpture as a jumping off point. It's humanoid, it's going to be mostly symmetrical. So I'm going to show how different techniques I find to show if I'm in line with my symmetry or if I need to make adjustments. And I usually like to do it at about this stage in the sculpture where I've got the block out, but I haven't started refining the details. So now I know where everything is in the sculpture. I know, like, I got my ears kind of blocked in, nose, eyes, all the major features are blocked into the sculpture. And before I start doing the detailing, I basically just want to go through and check everything and make sure that it's symmetrical. And the reason I do this now is because, like I said, I have all the details, so I have the basic landmarks established, but I haven't started doing the details. So if I need to switch something or change something, I'm at a position where I can do that without losing too much work. So first off, what I usually like to do is mark the center line. I want to mark where things are symmetrically. So I'm going to try and line this up with the camera. I'm just using a spatula here. You can use any tool that can make a mark. And I'm basically going to just draw a center line. Oops, and see. And right now I'm actually using the sculpted features to establish where that center is. And I'm carefully just going down. And bringing it back up here too. And right now that looks like it's fairly dead center. I can see right now that I have a little bit of wobble going on. So like if you really need to change your line, it's likely means that something's asymmetrical. So right now I'm going to go through like right here. That's pretty much dead center. Her teeth are a little bit janky, but that's okay because I want them to be janky. But if I were trying to make a beautiful character or something that I wanted to be more symmetrical, I would probably adjust the teeth so that the center space is in the center line here. Nose, fairly symmetrical. I can see that I have a little bit too much bulk here. So I can just pare that down. And I can see right here, like this area here is a little bit thinner than this area. So I might want to widen that up a little bit there and then pare this down. And it's just making these little micro adjustments like that. And then up here. Next, I want to try and see if like the ears are lined up. One thing to note is that the top of your ear usually lines up with the corner of your eye. Now this character, I tried to make her eyes look a little bit more sinister. So they're kind of pointed downward, but normally your human eye would be like this. Instead of this, it would be like this. But we're just going to use this, and it lines up with the top of your ear. And you can see I'm pretty close. But I might want to like bring this down a little bit. Other things with symmetry and finding out, again, this mostly applies to human proportions. You can do it with some animals, but not every animal, or animalistic characters. Another thing to measure, and again, you can just, this is a drawing technique that I used to teach in college. You can take your tool. So right now, like that is a width of the eye. I'll kind of measure it over here, so about the same. And then one eye width should go in between. So here. I did space it slightly wider on this one because I'm planning on having, I wanted to look a little bit more animalistic. So I did make it slightly wider than an actual human eyes would be. But usually you have one eye width here, one eye width here, one eye width here, one eye width here, and one eye width here. So 5 eyes across your sculpture. And again, these are just jumping off points. They're going to vary from character to character and from person to person. Next, I'm going to go over some of the other tools that I use. I do have a calipers. You can get these from any art supply store or sculpture house, or even Amazon has them. You could also use that to measure your eyes right there. right there, right there. So basically 3 across. Oh, before I move on, one other thing to consider is that your pupils usually line up with the corners of the mouth. And again, I am pushing it a little bit because I want her to be a little bit more sinister. And then the corner of the eye usually lines up with the edge of the nostrils. I can see right now I have this one a little bit too far out. So I'm just making micro adjustments. And these are ways that things just sort of line up. Calipers, like I said, I can measure with the eyes. So again, I said I did want to make it a little bit wider. But it's approximately, it's hard to tell because the camera is warping the parallax is happening here. But usually it's like between the edge of your head. So I probably, what I'm seeing right now is that I do need to bulk this out a little bit here and here. Other things to consider. The bottom of your earlobe usually lines up approximately right around here, like in here. Now because she's older, as you get older, your earlobes tend to sag, so I did bring them down a little bit. So that's not necessarily the best measurement to go by, but just sort of be conscientious of it. So right now, just for the sake of the sculpture, I can see that my earlobe lines up with the corner of her mouth. And I think I'm pretty good on this side too. Looks like it. Now, one thing I can see, just looking at it carefully, is that this ear is kicked out more. So I'll do this off video in a time lapse, but this ear I'm gonna need to push out more so that it sticks out more to match this one. All right, so other things you can do is you can use this to measure the calipers. So like, if I wanted to make sure like the cheeks are in the same place on both sides, like, okay, so here's the top of her head, there's the cheek, top of the head, there's the cheek. I'm pretty even there. You can also use this like if you're trying to create a one-to-one sculpture of somebody in particular. I've seen a lot of people that do this with like, where they'll print out a life-size photograph and they use this to measure from the photograph to the sculpture. So that's just a quick way of hammering out where things should be symmetric-wise. And you can see like I have all my guidelines. A lot of times I'll leave these in the sculpture for a while, or if I obliterate them, I'll put them back in. Just different techniques to find it. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some other techniques that I use to see if things are symmetrical. And a lot of these you can do in Photoshop, or like I have a Photoshop app on my phone. I'll just flip it around on my phone with some pictures. But I think it's also helpful to know how to do it outside of the phone, non-digitally. One of the easiest ways to see if things are looking weird or asymmetrical is to take your sculpture and flip it upside down. And that lets you see all the stuff that you maybe weren't seeing before. I'm gonna lower this a little bit. Sorry. There we go. So right now I can see that the face here, and I didn't see this before. I didn't see this before I started this video, but this is something I need to address. And this might even be something that's an issue with the life cast that I'm working on, because no one's face is perfectly symmetrical. But I can see that this side is sort of pushing out more, and it's also got a more steep grade here than this side. I don't know if you guys can see that. Basically that this side kicks out a little bit more. I was talking about that with the ear, but here it's kicking out, the whole sculpture's kicking out. So either I need to widen this up a little bit, which I think is what I'm gonna end up doing, or I could take off the whole sculpture and then recenter it on the buck, which I'm not gonna do because that's way too much work. You basically have to decide what level of asymmetry you're willing to live with. Like I said, it depends a lot on the character. If you're making a beautiful like character that you want to look perfectly symmetrical, then you're really gonna have to pay attention to what you're doing and make these micro adjustments all the time. But yeah, I feel like sticking something upside down really helps you to see your sculpture in a new light. Another thing on a side note that it helps with is like, and this is a problem with that you're gonna come in, you're gonna have to address if you're molding your sculpture, is that you gotta check for all these little gaps. So like I'm seeing like some gaps here, where I just put that booger down. Like I can see there's a gap here. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but little holes in the sculpture. So when you mold that, whatever you mold it with is going to go into that hole, and it's going to create like a booger basically, that like in here, where when you demold your sculpture, it's either going to break off and take some of the detail with it, or it's just going to be there and it's going to affect your pulls, and then it's going to probably break off then. So either way, you're causing problems. So it's always good to seal up all those little holes if you're going to be molding. If you're just going to make this as a sculpture, like if you're working with something that you're planning on just keeping in sculpture form and not molding and making copies of, then it really doesn't matter that much. Okay, so that's one way of looking at your sculpture in a new way, is flipping it upside down. Another way that I like to do is by turning it around and having a mirror over here. So I just have like this makeup mirror that I use, and I don't know, yeah, you can't see that. So I'm trying to arrange it for the camera, but basically you can use the mirror to help you sculpt in the mirror to see things backwards. And that's again a really good way to see how far you are off, just like it with the other technique. Another way that I like to use the mirror, like say I sculpted on one side, like I really like this ear, and I dig it, I want to make the other ear look like it. What I'll do is I'll set up my sculpting bench so that I can see the ear that I want to replicate while I'm sculpting on the ear that I need to copy, or that I need to make better. So, sorry. I come up with these wonderful ad hoc systems. So, right now, here, I'll show you on the camera. I can see both ears at the same time. Right here, right there. And what that allows me to do is to just copy the shapes. And it's easier, instead of having to reverse it in your mind, that you can see it that way. And it also allows you to move around the sculpture and see it with different lighting. So mirrors are very helpful. See calipers, flipping it upside down. And I think the biggest thing that's going to help you with your sculpture and helping with symmetry is just walking away from your piece. If you walk away from your piece, if you can get some distance from it, you're going to see lights and darks and shadows, and that'll help you read it. Like moving the lighting around, like that might help you see. Like, again, you know, I'm talking about how this side's more flared out. I can see right now that like I'm getting more shadows over here than I am over here, then I need to bulk this side out. And then of course, like I said, you can always take pictures of your sculpture. I think that taking pictures of my sculptures helps a lot to help me see where things need to change, because the angle of the camera, the parallax that happens with the lens, that'll help you see your sculpture in a new way. So a lot of times when I'm finished with a sculpting session, I'll take pictures of my sculpture. One, to help me track my progress, and then two, to help me just see it with new eyes and fresh eyes and see where I need to make changes. These videos for me, it also help a lot, because like when I look at this sculpture in real life, these shadows look a lot stronger than they're looking on camera. So if you are going to be using your mask or whatever you're making on film, that's something that you really need to do, is look at it through a camera to figure out how it's going to read. I think that's all I wanted to cover today, but I just wanted to like give you some tools to find symmetry and make adjustments as you see fit. Again, this won't work with every character, but it should help with like humanoid characters or characters that you want to be, again, the more symmetry that we see, the more beautiful we tend to read it in our minds. So if it's more symmetrical, it'll read as more beautiful. So like trying to get that perfect will help. I do think that there's some amount of asymmetry that always happens naturally in nature. So if you are the type of person that can absolutely nail symmetry, and for example, this is something I see a lot in like ZBrush, and I'm guilty of myself. If you're in ZBrush and you're sculpting with symmetry on, your sculpture looks too symmetrical, and then it tends to look a little bit inorganic, which can work for what, you know, depending on what you're doing, but sometimes it doesn't work. So again, if you're thinking about this digitally, you'd want to break symmetry and make adjustments. So think about your character, think about what you're trying to convey with the symmetry, how, you know, even if she's saggy, as this character is, like how saggy, how different do I want both sides to be? I do, in this case, I think I wanted the eyes to be a little bit more crooked, in terms of like one being a little bit higher than the other, but right now they're fairly symmetrical, and I actually kind of like it, so I might leave it that way. And again, just always take breaks from your sculpture and look at it with fresh eyes. I think that helps the most. If you have any questions, please leave them below the video, and I will try to address them as quickly as possible. And thank you for watching.